तेनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहैः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Verse number 30. न घोरासु न मूढासु
न घोरासु न मूढासु
सुखानुभव ईक्ष्यते
सुखानुभवयिष्यते
शान्तास्वपि क्वचित् कश्चित्
शान्तास्वपि क्वचित् कश्चित्
सुखातिशय ईक्ष्यताम्
सुखातिशय ईक्ष्यताम्.
So in the Ghora mode and the Moodha mode, there is no Ananda. Yeah. In the word sad Ananda, the sad overcomes the Ananda. That's what it is. The sadness obfuscates or hides the Ananda that is already there, and the anger that is there in the Ghora Vritti, the anger and the restlessness, they also conspire to hide the Ananda and not make it available to this person. And then finally what? In the Shanta Vritti alone the Ananda is manifest. Is it fully manifest? No. It is not fully manifest. And it is manifest a little bit, sometimes here and there. And why is that said? I talked about it yesterday, and I'm going to just recall what we learned yesterday. Why is that said it is manifest sometimes in some place, even in the Shanta Vritti? Because the Vritti is not dependent upon Brahman. And if Brahman, that is Ananda, all Vrittis come out of what? Brahman alone. So, and Brahman doesn't undergo any change while projecting the Vrittis, just like you do not undergo any change while projecting the dream. So to all the thoughts, all the mental modifications, all the moods and the modes are sustained by Brahman alone. Correct? So the Shanta mode also is sustained by Brahman. Only thing is the Shanta mode is conducive to gaining the knowledge of Brahman. That is what it is. So the Shanta mode is a very important preparatory step to clearing the mind and living in the Shanta mode to be able to gain this teaching. Whereas in the other two modes, like we saw yesterday, all the qualifications are gone down the drain. The angry person, the sad person, this knowledge is not for the sad or the angry. Yeah. That there is anger, yes. That I am subject to anger, yes. For such person it is, this knowledge is there. But somebody who for the large part of their lives responds to situations in their life by becoming angry, that is not the solution. And that is not the way to gain this knowledge, because the knowledge is not gained through, the knowledge has to be gained through a calm mind. And that calm mode is called Shanta mode. So that's why it is said, even in the Shanta mode, the happiness is sometimes. Why sometimes, kabhi kabhi? Because at other times something happens. The Shanta mode starts to get sad as soon as it thinks it's going to end. When the nice experience, like we saw in the earlier class, when the Priya, Moda, Pramoda are going to end, the Shanta mode starts to think, oh no, it becomes Moodha immediately, you see? Yeah. And in anticipation that the Shanti will be taken away, it could become Ghora. So Shanta mode also is subject to change, let us not forget. And it's a relative Shanti here. The Shanti in the mind is a relative Shanti as opposed to the absolute Shanti which is your own nature. And ironically and paradoxically, you need the relative Shanti in order to be able to pursue that you are absolutely Shanta. In order to pursue the absolute Shanti, you need the relative Shanti. Funny, no? Yeah. That's what I meant, adhikritasya adhikaraha. So that's why, the Shanta Vritti also is not a guarantee of a lasting Ananda, because the person wants a lasting Ananda. Wants the Ananda to last. Nobody says, I want to be Ananda for 5 minutes. Everybody says, I want to be Ananda forever and ever and ever and ever. And ever and ever and ever and ever. Correct? And what am I gaining? I'm gaining sadness. Instead of Ananda, I'm having sadness when? Forever and ever and ever. This is the feeling. Life after life after life, I'm a sad jiva and I'm not getting this. So forever I'm seeking the forever. That's not a good thing, because the search for the forever becomes infinite when you don't know that it is centered on that forever that you seek is centered on yourself forever. The search for the self is centered on your own self forever. So, what are you going to do? Huh? So therefore, this forever business is not separate from you. And so the Shanta Vritti, which is the key to gaining the absolute as yourself, has to be there. The mind has to be calm, and that's one more reason to be in the Shanta mode. And then how to be in the Shanta mode is described in the next few verses, but in a slightly humorous way, the beautiful tongue-in-cheek humor, a kind of a tongue-in-cheek humor that only Vidyaranya Swami is so famous for. So how to be in Shanta mode is described by a very unique method of showing why not to be in Ghora and Mudha mode. So why does a person suddenly get overpowered by Ghora Vritti and by Mudha Vritti? What are the causes are given there, and then when you study the causes you will see that I really need to be in Shanta. So let us look at verse number 14 now. गृहक्षेत्रादिविषये यदा कामो भवेत् तदा राजसस्यास्य कामस्य घोरत्वात् तत्र नो सुखम्. So from this we can conclude that Swami Vidyaranya knows English, knew English. He says no sukham. That is his conclusion. I'm not kidding. What is the second last line? No sukham. That's the last. What's the second last word? No. No sukham. What does no sukham means? Only dukkha. Perhaps that is not what we have to see is perhaps the English word no came from the Sanskrit word na'u, not indeed. Yeah, that's something to think about. Na plus u, a plus u becomes o. Na plus u becomes no. No means not at all, no possibility of sukham, no sukham. So, what doesn't give no sukham? Let us see. Griha kshetradi vishaye yada kamo bhavet tada. Yada. Yada means when. When what? Kamaha bhavet. When there is a strong desire. When is there a strong desire? For what? Griha kshetradi vishaye. In matters such as, in objects, vishaya, objects, such as house, griham, and kshetram, land, etc. Land, house, property, cattle, iPad and all this. Everything you have to see. So in all these items, in all these vishayas, when there is desire, yada kamaha bhavet, when desire bhavet here means arises, when the kama arises, tada what? Then rajasasya asya kamasya. So for this desire which is rajasic in nature, for this rajasic desire which is rajasic in nature, what happens? Ghoratvat, due to agitation in the mind, there is no sukham. There is no happiness whatsoever. So, in other words, the desire centered on objects leads to sorrow, sooner or later. And he will tell why later. But just let us look at the beauty of this verse. The desire centered on objects leads to sorrow. Because before you gain it, there is sorrow because I don't have it. And as you are striving to gain it, there is agitation. Ghora is there. Then after you gain it, there is fear it will be taken away. Then immediately Buddha comes. Sorrow is there. So where is the happiness? Therefore he concludes, no sukham. And why is that? Because the objects in themselves are finite and they are not guaranteed that they will stay with you. First of all, you may never get them. The question of staying arises once you receive them, correct? First you don't even get them, and then how are they going to stay with you? They cannot stay with you. They cannot stay with you because you can't even get them. Like a lottery. Somebody told me I have a recurring dream. What is the recurring dream? I'm winning the lottery ticket. I'm keeping on winning the lottery, winning the lottery, winning the lottery. And then as soon as I go to collect the check, I wake up. What should I do? I said, enjoy the good karma, that is, at least in the dream you are winning the lottery. If not in real life. In the dream you are winning the lottery, this is good. So supposing you have desire for this lottery, you won't even get it, correct? And so the sad feeling each time this lottery ticket winner is announced. And nowadays we are having lot of interesting situations with the lottery ticket. A hopeless person in the Mudha mode bought a lottery ticket. This is a real story that happened. And what did she do? On the way home, she just looked at it and she said, come on, give me a joke. Am I going to win the lottery? No way. And then she threw it in the dustbin, while going home. From her work, where she purchased, right next to the shop, there was a trash can outside. She threw it in the dustbin. And then the rag picker came and picked it up. And said, oh, the rag picker, even though had a hopeless, helpless, sad job, had more hope than the person who purchased the ticket. And the rag picker said, oh, the date is not yet over, let me hang on to it. That became the winning ticket. Who should get the money? Who should get the money?
The rag picker.
Yes, that's what you all think. The rag picker should get the money. No. The lady, when she found out that, because the rag picker was very honest and said, oh my God, today is my lucky day, I picked it out of the dustbin. When the TV people came to interview, the rag picker said, I picked it out of the dustbin. And so this lady saw the TV, because that's what she was always seeing, the TV, and feeling sad that the other person is winning the lottery. And she was outraged. So usually she would have been in Mudha mode, but then here she became Ghora mode and put a lawsuit on the rag picker, claiming that, and of course, these days there is so much surveillance. We live in a society of total surveillance. Yeah, all the emails are read. Now we hear that the postal service is reading all the things that come via the post also. Maybe they sit and steam the envelopes, I don't know. I don't know how they are reading it, but some people have said there is surveillance. And of course, there is, each time you buy something on the internet, the companies also surveil you in addition to the government. First there was only corporate surveillance of your choices. This Google and all these people would, collect data. And then now, along with the companies, the government also knows what you buy, when you buy, how much you buy, everything. We live in a highly surveilled society. And not a single act, however mundane, goes without being recorded by the security camera. And so in the lawsuit, she could prove that she was throwing away the lottery ticket and it actually will belong to her. And then she, of course, said she didn't mean to throw it away. She threw it away in a moment of despair or whatever it was, accidentally, and because it was recorded by the security camera. So she got most of the money. Yeah, that is how it is. So then you can say, okay, maybe she was in Shanta Vritti. No, even winning the lottery ticket, you cannot be in Shanta Vritti because you have thrown the ticket into the dustbin due to the previous Mudha Vritti. That's what I'm telling you. So then after finding out that she had won, she wanted to retain the money for herself. Then there was a protracted lawsuit. And none of you read about this?
Yes, I
Yeah,
remember.
you read
Yeah, I
about this.
remember.
Yeah, so it had come in the paper.
Yeah, it was
Because
in the US.
sometimes people think that, yeah, it is in this country only where such things can happen. So, people think I sit here and make stuff up. I do. Sometimes I do. Not in this instance. Usually I tell you when something is made up. So this is what happened. So the Shanta Vritti, of what use is it? Because it is just a replacement to the Ghora and the Mudha. It's like the three states of experience. What are they? Don't say Shanta, Ghora, Mudha. That's not the three
Waking,
states.
sleeping, dreaming.
Abba, thank you. Waking, sleep, waking, deep sleep and dream. Correct?
Yeah.
So each state cancels out the other, does it not? Yeah. So here also, as soon as you start feeling jubilant that you are in the Shanta state, the other one comes and cancels it out. So therefore what? What is the conclusion? No sukham. Tatra no sukham. This is Vidyaranya's conclusion. No sukham at all, nowhere. And so therefore, the word object, another thing to know, the word object in Sanskrit is called Vishaya. Why? Because the meaning of the word Vishaya is that which binds. That which is like super glue. That binds. What does it bind? It binds the mind. What does it bind the mind into? Ghora and Mudha vrittis. This is the meaning of the word object. Object, the definition of object is that which binds. Vishinoti iti vishayaha. Vishinoti badhnati, that which binds. And Vishinoti means it encircles you. First it looks like a short dalliance and you feel in control. You say, this is not a big deal. I'll just go in and come out of this. This is nothing, This is nothing at all. I can have a dalliance with this. I'll go in and come out. Like Hanumanji. You know Hanumanji? Yeah, the Rama's, Sevak, Bhakta, the devotee of Lord Rama in the Ramayana, called Vanara. Vanara means belonging to a species. Naro va nava iti shanka means there was a doubt, Nara or not, human being or not. So that is, it's some kind of a humanoid jati, species. And so Hanumanji, when he was crossing he leaped from Rameshwaram in the southern tip of India, near the southern tip, on to Jaffna, which is the other side of the town in Sri Lanka. He made this jump. He jumped. He was blessed by Vayu, his mother, Anjana Devi, fell in love with Vayu Devata. And she fell in love with the wind, one of the 5 elements. And she was blessed with Hanuman, who was as strong, swift and nimble as the wind. So he inherited all this from his father. And then therefore he could leap, he could easily, oust anybody who was a long jump, in the long jump of the Olympics. Long jump, high jump, everything he would do. All gymnastics, because he had air in his feet, he could jump. So Hanumanji got ready to jump. And when he jumped, they say that all these temptations came and he was faced with the temptations. Somebody said, save me. Somebody said, you owe me something. And then all these things he had to do. As he was jumping, he had to finish a certain tasks and tests and get to the other side. This is of course an allegory. Metaphorically, what does it mean? That whenever you are embarking on a great task, there will be vignas. Vignas means what? Obstacles. There will be obstacles. And those obstacles are part of surmounting the obstacles is focusing on this. So here he was jumping into enemy territory, and in the enemy territory before that, the final thing that came was this huge demoness rose from the ocean, and she says, I am the demoness of the ocean. And nobody goes without having entered my mouth. And once you enter the mouth, it is aha, swaha. I swallow everything that comes. So you also cannot go without paying me my toll, my highway toll, ocean way toll, is that you have to, enter my mouth. You cannot say, I've already paid the toll online and here is the card to show it. You can't, nowadays you can buy something. What is that called? Something it is called. Something you put on the windshield of the car and you don't have to stop to pay the toll. In big cities they have.
Easy pass.
Easy pass, yes. Fast pass, easy pass like this. So he also, Hanumanji showed his easy pass and said, I have fast pass, I can pass through the motorway. And she said, no, that is in a different yuga. We are in a different yuga now. Don't bring the technology of some other yuga. You have to go through the mouth. You cannot do this. And so he was very quick-witted. You know what he did? He made himself as small as a fly. He said, okay, let me see how big your mouth is. Open your mouth. And she said, she was huge. And she kept on opening the mouth. And in that time, he became the size smaller than a fly and went in and came out and then resumed his size. And he says, I have done what you asked me to do. I have paid the highway, ocean way toll. So now you have to let me go. And of course, she being true to her words. That was a wonderful time, even when the demons were true to their words. So she let him go. So why I am bringing this story in is that, going into the mouth of the demoness is no joke, correct? And to think you can come out alive. And so the objects are like the mouth. That is what in the mouth of the demoness, shows the endless desires. She opens so wide that she keeps on opening, it's like a yawning chasm. It's like a yawning chasm of want. That is what the demoness represents. And by swallowing one Hanuman, she'll be happy? No way. And so the person who who has a dalliance with the desire, thinks I can just come out of this object like that. Before it has the power to sadden me, I can come out. And people think like this of people also. Oh, I can just, control this person that I have just married. No problem, I won't come under the spell of this person. Famous last words, that's all. Yeah, last words means not last final words, but final words on that relationship. Because you know that it just sucks you in. And the mouth of the demoness, going into the world of objects, is like entering the mouth of the demoness. And without the Shraddha, Bhakti and courage of someone like Lord Hanuman, you cannot come out. Hanuman was he was a sadhu, he was asanga. He was uninvolved in anything. That's why he could come out without getting scorched. And so like this, the objects look very small, very user friendly. In fact, nowadays we are attracted, the smaller it is, the more attractive it is. iPad mini, a small one. Oh, it is so much lighter, so much smaller, so much nicer. And the phones are becoming smaller. All the things are becoming smaller. Computers are becoming smaller. But is our dependence any less on them than when they were desktop size? No. In fact, it is more because they are so ubiquitous that they go everywhere with us. Pretty soon we cannot sleep without them, we cannot wake up without them. People keep the phones by the side and put the alarm on the phone. Why? It's easy because it's right there. And on the phone they play games, on the phone they check the email, on the phone everything happens. On the surface of the phone they use as a plate to eat. They have their lunch and dinner. The phone becomes everything. So the smaller it is, don't think it is any less dangerous. It is more dangerous because our dependence, because they are so cute and look so user friendly, then what happens? User friendly means they are using you, you are not using them. Yeah. You are friendly to them because the more you are friendly to them, the more you won't let them go, the more you will buy them and keep on buying them. That is what is user friendly. As a user, you are friendly, and while you are being friendly, you are getting dependent on them. New meaning of the compound user friendly. Yeah. You're being used. Yeah, in a friendly way. That's all it is. As a user, you are being used in a very friendly way. And so they all look benign. And everybody thinks, how can this hurt? This cannot hurt. Only one thing. How can it hurt? That's what the person who is given to alcohol thinks also. You know, just one little bottle, how can it hurt? One little cup, how can it hurt? And every person who is an alcoholic might say, I can easily give up alcohol. That's the feeling. Why? Because I've already done it 32 times. See? I have a say over this. So the objects are addictive. Even to the one who vehemently protests, they are not addictive. In fact, they are more addictive because you are protesting. That shows that there is something there. They are more addictive, not less. The objects are addictive. And therefore the subject, I, the person, whenever the person tries to derive the joy out of the objects, gets ensnared into the world of objects called Vishayaha, where the objects then rule over the subject, and the subject has a sense of feeling untethered, lost and in despair. In other words, always switching between Ghora and Mudha modes. That's all it is. So, Griha Kshetradi Vishaye Yada Kamo Bhavet Tada. Whenever there is desire for any object, like a house, what does the house represent? Security. You know, house can represent many things, but it can just represent a roof over the head. But generally it represents security. Why does it represent security? Because the person who desires the house is insecure. You know, one day, when I was in southern Georgia, somebody said, come, I want to talk to you. I said, okay, talk to me. I get nervous sitting and talking. Can we just walk around the road? I said, sure, we can take a walk. So I took a walk with this person, and they did not talk to me at all. Why? Because they were busy looking at the houses. Oh, this one looks like it is $400,000. This one looks like it has got this A-frame. This one looks like it has a den. How can you tell you have a den when you're outside? No, I've seen enough houses to know that this will have a den. What is this den? Where wild animals hang out. When you're in the Ghora and the Mudha mode where you hang out, that is called den. So, and where you are a captive for all the objects. You have been tethered by the objects. That's called a den. Oh, this one has a balcony. This one has the columns, those southern style columns. And I was very puzzled. I said, are you planning to buy a house? No. I already have a house. I said, are you planning to move to another house? No. Is someone you know wanting to buy a house? No. Then why are you looking at all the houses and all the prices and getting very excited when you see a for sale sign? In this whole 15-minute walk, I haven't seen you, talk about anything other than house. No, I just like the idea of house. And then the person also said that they subscribe to all these magazines about the house. Wow, what kind of market, where the market is rising, where it is falling, what is it doing, completely ensnared, not by the house, by the concept of the house. If the concept has such a powerful effect on you, imagine what it represents. So it's clear that the person doesn't desire a house. The person desires the idea of security. And so kshetra, land also, represents wealth, security. Wealth is also for the sake of security. Any object you desire is not for the sake of the object, but it is for security. And how can the insecure person, if the person is already insecure, how can this insecure person go about collecting security? That which you are fond of, that which you are thinking as the source of security itself is finite. So insecure plus finite, double insecurity, correct? Insecure plus finite, double insecurity. And this is what leads people to get married or to live in committed partnerships. Why? Swayam insecure. Anyan insecurayati means makes the other person also insecure. Insecure plus insecure, doubly insecure. That is what happens. Then you feel I was better off when I did not have a partner. Because once you have a partner, then does the person really care? That becomes a major issue. Then you know they really care, then how much do they really care? And since the care and the love cannot be quantified, one is always in doubt. One is doubting all the time. And then one needs reassurance. You go away for a few hours and then you ask the significant other, did you miss me? The significant other would not have missed. But it's not cool to say that. If you want to continue being the significant other, don't say, honey, I did not even think of you. Truth be told, because I was so busy just doing so many things, I was just happy just being here. Truth be told, dearest one, I did not even think of you. I'm glad you're here though, but I did not think of you. If you say that, you will be only other. You will no longer be significant, correct? You will be othered, that's all. So nobody can say, I did not miss you. Yes, I missed you. Then the partner asks another question. How much you missed? Come on, tell. How are you? Already you have made up one fib. How are you going to say how much you missed? Can you measure it? 6 inches I missed. Okay, here, this much. You cannot do that. So this shows that one is always seeking validation. Validation to be secure from other insecure things and other insecure people. This is called samsara, where one insecure bonds with another insecure in the hope that there will be security. And knowing full well that, after a few years of marriage or partnership, you know that this is not going to happen. Then you opt for plan B. What is plan B? At least let us be insecure together. Yeah, misery loves company, correct? Yeah. There is a saying, misery loves company. And so, one can keep on making a guest list. For what? Pity party. Yeah. You can have a guest list for the pity party, and so the same people, the same kinds of people with the same kinds of gripes and complaints can come together and have a happily unhappy time together. That's all it is. Like I have said before, they will bring the hors d'oeuvres, the appetizers, appetizer of doubt. From the appetizer of doubt to the dessert of despair and the main dish of hopelessness, everything is covered. So they bring this potluck, a pooled dinner where everybody brings their own complaints, they share the complaints. Sometimes you get too many helpings of one person's complaint. Then you have indigestion, then you need a little time away from that group, or you seek another group, and then very soon the newness wears off. And actually it shouldn't be called a group, it should just be called a gripe. It's one big gripe. That's what it is. This is just a support group within samsara. And this is why we have to understand that the objects vishinoti, they tie you up. They tie you to what? Not, we shouldn't take it in a very banal way that, oh, the objects are tying me to them. That is just the surface of it. The objects tie you to your own idea that I am a permanently insecure person, a wrong idea. The objects tie you to thinking and seeking, continuous seeking the infinite in finite places. That's how the objects tie you. Not just for the object itself. But the repercussions are really far reaching. The objects tie you, saying that you need to become secure by add-ons. So many add-ons. Insecure plus wife, still insecure life. Insecure minus wife, still insecure life. Insecure plus husband, still insecure. It's just that the idea that one is insecure is the problem. And if one was really insecure, then also these objects cannot do anything, correct? Because if by nature you are insecure, if that is your real nature, that one is subject to insecurity centered on the sense of I. If you are already insecure, then what can the objects do? Make you Shanta for 2 minutes and then back to insecurity, correct? And then if you are not insecure, if that's what the Shastra says, you are not at all insecure, then what can the objects do? Nothing. In either case, the objects cannot say anything about the subject. In fact, it's the subject who cognizes the objects, not the other way around. The objects come to light to the subject, not the other way around. So the insecure is always insecure. And whether this is my nature or not, I have to think about it. And just the looking deeply into the 3 states of experience shows that one is not insecure. Because in sleep, there is no insecurity. Right? No insecurity in sleep at all. This is a good thing. That's why nobody wants to wake up, because as you arise, so does the insecurity. Oh no, oh no, oh no, first thing in the morning. How will I get everything done? I'm overwhelmed. I'm upset. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. No, 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 no. This is how one wakes up. So that means in the sleep, everything is okay. That should give a clue that perhaps that is my real nature. Or even if you say secure, if you cannot get to the point of saying security is my real nature, you can at least say this. You can at least say perhaps insecurity is not my real nature. Why? Because if it was my real nature, it would not come and go. It would be there always. So if insecurity is not my real nature, if insecurity is my real nature, I cannot remove it by taking recourse to the world of objects, because that which is real cannot be negated, cannot be removed. Okay, insecurity is not your real nature. Then if it's not my real nature, what is there to remove? Where is the insecurity? If it's not real, you cannot remove it. If it is real, you cannot remove it. So therefore, we have to say the insecurity is a adhyasa, a superimposition as it were on the self. A mistake made that is centered on the self. It's not that the body that is insecure or the mind that is insecure. It's the person who owns up this body, mind, sense complex as I, me, mine. That is the one who is insecure. In fact, the more you use the word me and mine, the more one is in the ghora and the mudha vrittis. Further, let us see what happens when one goes down this path of insecurity when this is not checked. Verse number 15. Siddhyenna vetyasti dukham
Siddhyenna vetyasti dukham
Asiddhau tadvibardhate.
Asiddhau tadvivardate.
Pratibandhe bhavet krodhah.
Pratibandhe bhavet krodhah.
Dvesho va pratikulyatah.
Dvesho va pratikulyatah.
Yeah. So now these are a few very interesting scenarios. Very nice. What are the scenarios? When you have something, correct? You have something like you are seeking something. You are going to give an important exam upon which depends your promotion in a job, let us say. Or you are looking to try to, get married. So this should be a good thing, that you might get a promotion, that you might get married. This should be a good thing. But that should already give Shantavritti. But more often than not, Swami Vidyaranya says, it does not. Why? Because of the agitation and the agony. So even in anticipating something, there is agony. Anticipation is an agonizing experience, he says. Siddhyet nava iti. Iti means thus. Siddhyet, will it succeed? Will my undertaking succeed? You have to supply those words, they are not there in the text. Siddhyet nava, will my undertaking succeed or not? Iti, thus, there is dukkham. What is dukkham? Contentment. No.
Suffering.
Suffering. There is suffering just anticipating whether this will succeed or not. Okay? So when you are anticipating the results of the exam or the results of the marriage, see, that's why I equated them together. Marriage is like a test. Except the other test which you go to a hall and write the exam, that at least finishes, Marriage is like a everyday test, an endless test. Every day new questions. Some of them very fundamental, What for I am here? What do I have to learn from this? That the person has to ask every day. What do I have to learn from this? Yeah. So this is the thing. So marriage is a frightening everyday test, scary test for which you can't even study. The other test has a portion, The other test, like you give all these, pre-medicine, you give a test to go into the medical school. Then the pre-management school, you give a test. This technology, before you take, you give a test. All these things, they have a certain, you can buy the books, you can study the books, and all the questions will be within the frame of those, 500, even if you have to study 500 pages. You have to sit and cram 500 pages, but still the portion will be in those contained, the questions will come from those 500 pages. No, marriage is not like that. Because the questions can come from anywhere, out of the blue, and usually the question comes every day from the part from which you have not studied. Yeah. Because every day is a surprise. How to answer this question? What is the question? Did you miss me? See, I told you. So, how to answer this question? How many times you thought of me? These are all very crazy questions. How to answer these questions? And every day there is a new predicament for which there is no instruction booklet, and for which there is no cliff notes. Cliff notes? Yeah, there are these notes called cliff notes which helps you study for exams. For which there are no notes, no answer keys, no hints, no clues. Like when you're playing charades, you can say this sounds like, sounds like sukham. And then immediately dukkham, okay. But here it's no hint, no clue. And every day there is a new test, correct? And then how do you know the marriage has been successful? You don't. Even after 25 years you keep questioning, did I do the right thing? Did I do the right thing? Did I do the right thing? What if I had gone with the other one rather than this?
Yeah.
Thoughts will come, the road not taken. Somebody wrote a poem about that, yeah. There is a fork on the way, and then, and then there are two roads in a V shape, very attractive V shape. And one road this is the road of life, correct? One road has got trees, and the trees are laden with flowers and fruits, blossoms. The trees are so heavy with flowers and fruits, they are just going like this. And then there is a fragrance of the blossoms coming, and the road is lined with flower bushes on either side. The path is well worn and clear, and it seems that everybody is liking this road. They are all taking this road. And the other road is bereft of all scenery, correct? Just some boulders, some rocks, and it looks thorny also. It doesn't look like anybody has swept it too well. Thorny means full of small, sharp pebbles. And then, you are standing at the crossroad. What shall I do? Which one? And for the sake of safety and being very attracted to all those flowers and the music coming from this road, you go on the road well worn, correct? Yeah. Because you look at the other road, there are hardly any people. Only a few people in orange are walking on the other road. See, now I have given myself away. So just a few souls in orange are just walking on that road. And here, this road, everybody just like me is walking. So I am also going on this road. So saying, this person goes on the road. What is the road? Road of insecurity. Road of not insecurity. The insecure person trying to fix the insecurity by amassing more insecurity. That is the road. Yeah. Insecure plus insecure plus insecure plus insecure is equal to infinite insecurity. That's what it is. So the road of furthering the insecurity that is centered on this I, that's the first road. And the second road is the road of knowledge that removes the insecurity, correct? So many times this crossroad, something like this one would have faced. And 25 years after going on the wrong road, I wish I had gone on this one. And that's why some people get very passionate. They say, why didn't I encounter Vedanta in my 20s? Why didn't I encounter Vedanta? Why didn't I have Vedanta in kindergarten? In KG, In KG, the brain doesn't even weigh 1 kg, okay? Yeah. The child barely weighs a few kilos. And so, this is something, in a text called Bhaja Govindam, very nicely it is answered, this line of this lament of why, the quintessential Jiva's lament of why didn't I get this Vedanta much earlier, so I could have dealt with this Ghora Vritti, this Mudha Vritti, and been in Shanta and gone all this. We should put Vedanta as an enforced curriculum in the kindergarten. Bhaja Govindam says, Balastavat krida saktah. Balah, Tavat, at that time the child in childhood is just only obsessed with play, krida, play, creed, to play. Tarunastavat taruni raktah. Okay, let us just wait till they grow older, till youth. Then we'll have a Vedanta program at youth. And the Bhaja Govindam laments, the only thing the youth is interested in is another youth. That's all. Taruna, Taruni, that's all. Vriddhastavat chinta magnaha. Okay, then you have to wait till you retire. Look at the word retired. That means you're tired again and again. That's all it is. And do you think the insecurity decreases in old age? Not a chance. It only increases. Because before you had, a lot of insecurities, but you were not thinking of death and feeling insecure. The only difference is in old age, you feel closer to what is called death, and then you become even more insecure. Vriddhastavat chinta magnaha. So if you wait to study Vedanta, until you retire. Then what happens? Provided one survives retirement, one survives up to retirement, one's mind has become the home to all kinds of worries. All kinds of worries are taking root and growing a lush, a lush foliage of worries and all kinds of mental stressors. And then the Bhaja Govindam, the beautiful text laments, Pare Brahmani Kopina Lagnaha. Nobody is interested in Parasmai Brahmane. For the sake of Brahman, nobody is interested in Brahman. So which age is good to study this knowledge? The answer is no particular age. It does not depend on age. You could be 10 like Hastamalakiya. Hastamalakiya was a student of Adi Shankaracharya who had not spoken a single word. But it was clear that to his parents that he was not deaf. It was very clear. Because he would hear and he would, listen to what was being said. He was not hard of hearing. But he would not talk. Then the parents said, we have no use for him. Let us give him to a sadhu. A sadhu is coming to town, because he was just so sitting there and not doing anything. The parents were worried about him. They said, let us ask the sadhu what to do, and if he is of no use to us, at least he will sit and learn Vedanta. That is the idea. So they took this 10-year-old to see Adi Shankara. And Adi Shankara just asked one question. Kastvam Bala, who are you? Kahatvam, who are you, O child? And this quote-unquote child composed extempore a whole thing of 12 verses. A poem of 12 verses. Sanityopalabdhi swarupo hamatma. I am that Atma which is always there. What do you mean, who am I? I am that. And of course there was no problem in speech. He did not have trouble finding words or stringing words together. He did not have an impairment. And then later it was revealed that he didn't talk because there was nothing to say. There was simply nothing to say. He was not interested in all the things, all the words that the people were talked about were Vishaya, objects. He happened to be interested in the subject. And Adi Shankara himself says, you better give him to me because I don't think he's going to be of much use to you. If you are going to count on him to take care of you in your old age, forget it, because he's not going to do that. And the parents were too happy to, because now the child is starting to speak, he is happy, let him follow his destiny. So you see, you could be 10 or you could be 100. So it does not depend, the desire to study Vedanta does not depend on age. Yeah, it depends on how much you are keeping the fire burning, the fire of that desire to be free from samsara, that intense longing has to be kept burning. Because the distractions are too many. The things that tie and bind are so many that one has to keep it burning. So therefore the Shanta Vritti becomes extremely important to maintain, because the Shanta Vritti, in the Shanta mind, these kinds of wonderful desires come into the heart. How can I help someone? How can I be free? How can I share? Because the Shanta is Audaryam, we saw generosity, Kshantihi, accommodation, we saw earlier in the definition of what makes the Shanta mode. Someone who is compassionate, someone who has enjoys a lot of inner space, someone who is accommodative. We saw all that definition. And so the Shanta Vritti becomes something important to safeguard. And as long as one is doing this dance, what is the dance? How to get this object, then the Shanta Vritti is eminently disturbed. And the disturbances of the Shanta Vritti and how the Shanta Vritti can deteriorate into Ghora and Mudha is described in verse number 15. And what is that? Siddhyet nava iti shanka, ashanka. There is a doubt whether the enterprise like marriage will succeed or not, correct? Yeah. And so one is always having a regret. Before it succeeds, there is a fear, right? There is a fear before it succeeds. Oh, will it come true? Will the person say yes if I propose? Oh my God! And so one is only obsessed by the proposal. How should it be? And nowadays people are taking extreme measures to propose to their partners in the middle of railway station. Why? I don't know. And in the middle of some big football game. And why? I really don't know. What if the person says no, because in front of everyone you feel rejected, but still maybe they are very sure of themselves. In a park or in the airport, this is another thing. All this you hear. In the airport, this person proposed in front of all the passengers, and then all the passengers clap. In the airplane, you conspire with the flight attendant, and then you say, please give me the mic, and then will the lady sitting in row 36, seat A, will you please take my hand in marriage? The person is announcing. So all this creates a lot of anxiety, and the bigger you make the proposal, the more anxious, because you have to orchestrate this whole thing. You have to have people break out into song, dance, or rashes, as the case might be. So you have to coordinate not just your action and the person's reaction, whoever you are proposing to. You have to coordinate a series of unpredictable events. How to break out in song, dance. Yeah. And then you have to have an escape plan, because if the person comes after you with a stick, you have to know where to hide. You have to identify all the hiding places. So that nobody sees you feeling embarrassed. And so you have to orchestrate all these things. And then if you want to open, what is that thing they open, that thing comes out, that champagne or some fizzy, something you want to open, you have to have that ready. And you have to have someone who knows how to open it, because opening that thing is a dangerous affair in itself. It can go and hit somebody else, So all these things to coordinate is not easy. Immediately you feel nervous even before the enterprise has begun. That is what he means by siddhyet nava iti dukkham. So even the thing has not even started. The proposal hasn't even, you're just proposing in your mind to propose. And and already it is fraught with dukkham. Dukkham here doesn't mean sorrow. Dukkham here means all kinds of negative states of the mind. Difficulty, anxiety, a lot of angst. Existential angst, this is what it is. And the proposal hasn't even happened. Even dreaming about it, the person, gets sweaty in the hand and gets nervous. How to do, what to do, how to orchestrate this whole event. All right. Somehow, let's say they just bungled, mumbled, fumbled somehow through this whole thing. And they proposed. Then what happens? Asiddhau tat dukkham vivardhate. Asiddhau means in the event of a rejection. So here you have, involved the entire Grand Central Station in New York, Grand Central Station is a big place, like King's Cross in England, huge place. Everybody is going, even bigger perhaps. And everybody is going, coming. You don't know who is going, who is coming. A huge place, hundreds of trains. And then you have told 300 people, 500 random people you have given cards. Please assemble in the main place there, because I am proposing to this such and such, the love of my life. And they also have time and nothing else to do, and they want some live entertainment, because they missed their favorite show on cable television last night, so they all oblige. And people are generally helpful, they oblige, they just assemble. And what does this Mudha in Mudha Vritti do? Mudha goes and proposes. Mudha here doesn't mean the one in Mudha Vritti. Mudha here means not very bright here. Yeah. So the not very bright one, not very bright because the person hasn't done homework, hasn't been able to read the signs of approval in the significant other. Thinks, When the significant other has said, please go home, this person thinks, please stay for a little while longer, like this. So has misread all the signals. And so the person comes with cake, that champagne, and all these things. And that thing that you shower, yeah, confetti, all this thing is ready. And then what happens? The person says, absolutely not. So then what happened? Already the person was anxious, the significant other, because of the significant other's rejection, there is even greater dejection. Correct? This is what he says. Asiddhau tatra tat vivardhate. Vivardhate means visheshena vardhate. So the already anxiousness, the nervousness, the feeling unsure of oneself, the sadness that is always there before an enterprise became 100-fold along with the misery at the rejection. Correct? Yeah. Rejection means when the enterprise does not succeed, then there is great dejection. Because all this I have done for nothing. I worked so hard and I still didn't get it. I did so much preparation. It's like raining on the party or the parade. So you got the parade completely rained on. The events have to be moved indoors. Of course, you cannot march left, right indoors. So the parade has to be cancelled. And and that which was to be a float. You know the meaning of float? That things that pass on the parade, like all these various people in costumes and these big, pieces of stages made of plywood on wheels, and they depict all these characters. The float became a sink, and then because of the rain, everything had to be cancelled. So first there is anxiety, siddhyetna va, iti dukkham, misery, anxiety is already there before the undertaking of a project. And when the undertaking is unsuccessful, that anxiety and misery only increases. Correct? Yeah. Next what? Pratibandhe bhavet krodhaha. Okay, let us take this example again, So this man or this woman, whoever it is wanting to propose to the significant other and is getting ready and has involved the entire central station and confides about this plan to a best friend. This is what I'm planning to do. And the best friend says, I don't think this is such a good idea. I think you should wait for some more time. Why? Because the best friend has hung out with these two people. So the best friend knows both of them. The best friend says that maybe you're not reading this properly. Maybe this is too soon. Give it some more time. So what will the person who is doing all this preparation and has mentally decided to propose, what will they say to the best friend? Shut up. You don't know anything. Why are you asking me to wait? You want to get married to that person or what? So, pratibandhe, if anybody tries to stop you from getting what you want, there is anger. Yeah, this is what even in the Bhagavad Gita it says. Sangat sanjayate kamah, kamat krodho bhijayate. Second chapter. From association is born a desire. From associating with something daily, you feel like having it. And then what? From the desire is born anger. How can desire lead to anger? Because if the desire is inhibited, there is anger. And then you blame either the circumstances or the people or both who you perceive to have been the people stopping you from uniting yourself with the object of desire. Pratibandhe bhavet krodhaha. And pratikulyataha. Pratikulyataha means when the conditions to gaining your desire are not conducive. In the event, in the the event that there is no the conducive situations to gaining your desire are not there, meaning it is doomed even before it starts, in that event what happens? There is dvesha, hatred. Yeah. There is great hatred. For what? For those perceived or real conditions that you think cause the obstruction, the desire to be obstructed, and sometimes the object of desire also turns into an object of hatred. Like the person who refused the proposal. I hate you. Go away. I don't want to ever see you again. A few minutes ago, I want you to share my whole life with me. Just 5 minutes ago. And all this rigmarole for that. And then 5 minutes later, what changed? I don't like you anymore. Why? Because you are not giving me what I want. So really speaking, why does anybody like anyone? Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Everything is for the sake of oneself alone. It's not for the sake of anyone else. So you have stopped bringing out the pleased self in me. What I am wanting is not the object, but the subject. The subject that is pleased is what I want. And not knowing the fact that the subject is always ever pleased, I get displeased. So I focus on the object because I don't know the nature of the subject. And whenever I project the pleasure on the object, it will never fail to dissatisfy. It will always fail to satisfy. It will always make it so, it will be a very difficult situation. And therefore, we have here a wonderful thing. Dvesho va pratikulyatah. So when things don't go as planned, what is the ultimate thing? No sukham. When things go as planned, no sukham. When is there sukham? When there is no plan, sukham. Yeah. So either way one is doomed. If the enterprise succeeds, supposing, let us take this scenario. The person proposes and the other person says yes. So briefly they are jumping, they have the cookies, the cake, the champagne, and then after that the person is nervous. Both of them are nervous. Oh, what did I just do? Oh my God, did I say yes because there were all these people and I could not say no? That other person is thinking. Oh, did I ask too soon? The first person who asked is thinking. And so both of them are nervous. And is it a kind of nervousness they can share with each other? No. Secretly they are nervous. I don't think this is such a good idea. I don't know if this is the right person. I should have just studied Vedanta. Why am I doing this? Like this, all these doubts, all these fears, That is why in the Hindu tradition, marriage is not an end to be fulfilled. Marriage is a means to knowledge. It's a means to prepare for the knowledge. Then it is very successful. If marriage is seen as a means to an end, then it is extremely successful. Because both the partners are pursuing the knowledge together. There is nothing better than that. Because it's hard to do it alone. Or one person is supporting the other person's study. That is also okay. That is also good. But when marriage becomes the end, it ends. Yeah. Because no one can keep another person entertained lifelong. It's a big job. You can barely keep yourself entertained. So you can never be the live entertainment for someone else. So therefore, marriage is a means to an end. And marriage helps you prepare. If you look at marriage as a preparation, then it will not disappoint. Because every disappointment becomes a stepping stone for success in self-mastery. Every disappointment I learn to overcome. That means what? That means I'm no longer dependent on the other person for my, for my happiness. I can enjoy the other person without trying to wrest the remote from their hands. Yeah. Or give my remote control into their hands like we talked about last time. Each in their place, one is happy. And this is what is the Hindu definition of marriage. And you see this even with the older couples now. The grandma in India never says to grandpa, I think we should talk about our relationship. In fact, they barely talk. Even in this country, it might be like that with the older couples. Each one does their own thing. He has his friends, she has her friends. During meal times, they come together, and there is really nothing to say. And tradition forbids them from taking each other's names even. Out of respect, they are not supposed to call each other by name. So they'll just say, here you are, grunt. They just grunt when they see each other. That's all. This is not, this is actually a successful marriage. A successful marriage is where both the spouses outgrow the need for each other. If you outgrow the need for each other and you still want to be with one another, that's a wonderful thing. You don't need each other. That need always, there is a certain anxiousness. Whenever there is a question of need, you go into Ghora and Mudha Vritti. And that's what you are able to show to the significant other. You're not able to be in Shanta Vritti together. So the successful marriage, a successful partnership is where you can be in Shanta Vritti together. You help them bring out their Shanta Vritti and they do the same for you. You bring out the best in each other. And so otherwise, as we have seen in verse number 14, what have we seen? Is that one is a bundle of negative emotions, and that bundle of negative emotions has nothing to do with the success, failure of the enterprise. When the enterprise succeeds, one is a bundle of nerves and negative emotions. If the enterprise fails, one is a bundle of dejection. If there is a problem in gaining what one wants, one is a bundle of anger. And if there is roadblocks to achieving what one wants, one is disgusted and in the hatred mode. One is a bundle of hatred. So, and then he gives a few more scenarios of what all happens as a way of, as a result of this. We'll read this and address this verse tomorrow. Ashakyaschet pratikaraha
अशक्यश्चेत् प्रतीकारः
विषादस्यात् सतामसः
विषादस्यात् तामसः
क्रोधादिषु महद्दुःखम्
क्रोधादिषु महद्दुःखम्
सुखशङ्कापि दूरतः
सुखशङ्कापि दूरतः
ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ. Questions. You can also ask questions from the last class. I'll save a little time for questions now. Wonderful. Any questions here?